Okay, we're supposed to be back live now. We're discussing the social media policy and the concerns about an elected official being bound or having you sign the.
I think the concern was for elected and appointed was more the nature of the question, right? And so just in the short break, while I was looking at it, I mean, to try to break it down into the three, and you're right, this isn't specifically spelled out. The policy itself is never going to say, and what if you refuse to sign this policy? But for employees, I mean, whether they're at will or contracted, I mean, it'd be mandatory, obviously, like you had mentioned. For appointed officials, it would be pretty obvious, but we can also address this in training or even revised language. But refusal to acknowledge or adhere to it would be potential grounds for removal as an appointed member. And as an elected official, I mean, as an elected official, you'd have to publicly note their noncompliance, limit their use for official village platforms. And my guess is, as to insurance, we'd have to clarify that their personal posts are not going to be defended and indemnified anymore. So if there's a lawsuit, village is not going to protect you like they would typically, and they would have under the previous policy. So you lose coverage, and we'd have to publicly note the refusal, it would be my guess, and limit their use of village platforms.
So our acknowledgement form as written is for employees, not for any other board members. But are we drafting a separate acknowledgement form?
This is the acknowledgement as drafted by the Bodman firm, which they meant to be applicable to everyone. Because that would then, it implies to employees and it applies to village council as well, because they are technically employees because they're W-2 employees. That's what Bodman said. And then as far as for appointed boards that we issue it to, we've always had an acceptance that we had provided to them previously, because we've disseminated it to the other boards as well. And Bodman said we could either use this one or use the one we've used previously.
Well, I don't think we can use this one for our boards because it says my employment. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with appointed members of Planning Commission, ZBA, Park Board, DDA. They're not employees of the village. So,
right, and it says Elmont Police Department at the very last line. So it would have to be slightly generic.
So I think if we were to proceed, you would need, and to cover all the other boards, you would need to have a separate acknowledgement form, because this one applies to employees. So as I stated before, I fully support the policy as it pertains to websites, Facebook pages, other social media platforms that are official. Where I think this goes too far is in addressing people's public social media or private social media accounts. Requiring a disclaimer, I think, okay for employees, even for council members, if we feel like that's necessary. Where I really think it stretches too far is requiring people, volunteers, to sign an agreement that dictates their private use of social media, like I said, to me, it's a little too far. But that's my personal opinion. I also feel that some of the training slides don't necessarily reflect what I believe the intent of the policy is, that you can express your personal opinion as long as you disclaim it on your private social media accounts. Some of these examples really say you cannot say these things. Also, I think just going a little bit too far. And I don't want to make this not personal to me. Some of you are my friends on Facebook or Instagram, and I don't discuss village matters on my social media accounts. I just, like I said, feel that it's just a little too far for me. But that's my own opinion.
I would support your thought process there. Because some of it does feel compelled.
Mhm.
That to me is stepping over the line. It's like government isn't here to tell us what we have to do. Should we disclaim if we want to make it clear? Sure, that could be a voluntary thing. It's kind of ironic because that's what that one case says that they cited. They just didn't cite that portion of the case.
Mhm.
That it should be a voluntary disclaimer. It shouldn't be a compelled disclaimer, because then you're kind of stepping on the First Amendment a little bit.
That is not what that opinion says, and that is not what the
That's not
opinion
what-
of our attorney says either. In
Well-
fact, it states the exact opposite.
I know that's what it says in what the attorney said.
Right, and he gave a litany of case law to that effect, that required disclaimers are not a First Amendment violation.
Except that's not how that summary of that case in federal court. There's other opinions out there, because I looked them up, that say it did say that it was a violation of the First Amendment if it's compelled speech, which requires a disclaimer, a suggested disclaimer, or a you probably should disclaim. It's kind of like, especially around the personal social media posts, right? The assumption and the presumption is that if I'm posting, or anybody on any of our boards is posting on their personal social media page, it's their personal opinion. It's not upon them to prove that it's not. Unless they state, this is what the village thinks, or this is what this board thinks. Then they've stated that they're taking an official opinion. The presumption is if they're on their personal social media site, it's their personal opinion. Now, I completely agree that on all of the official Elmont pages, on all of the official Facebook, Instagram, whatever we have that say Elmont Police Department, we have a limited scope, we have a limited accessibility, only certain people post there. That's always an official post representing the village or anything connected with the village. 100% agree. Also agree that if you're an employee at my company, we have to sign a policy saying that we won't disparage our employer. Okay. But to me, when you get to the appointed people and elected officials, we're mixing two pots. And I would agree, separate acknowledgement form. One for actual hired people who report up through the chain to the village manager, and then
Sure.
appointed and
No,
elected.
Yeah, and
officials.
that language is easily,
Yeah.
easily tweaked to be acceptable for that. I mean, obviously, they gave an example there, because, like, for example, it mentions the collective bargaining agreement for the police department, as Bodman wrote it. I mean, that's obviously tweakable. I tend to disagree when he spells out the three prongs of the test, and how this applies to the three prongs of the test, which is the federal standard for it, and this does not violate the three prongs of the test. Again, it's a clarification. You can still speak freely on your topic. You just have to clarify that it is your personal opinion and not the opinion of the municipality. And nowhere are we telling you, you have to change your opinion. You can freely state your opinion. You just have to clarify that it's your opinion and not the opinion of the municipality. So
I do disagree with how the slides present that.
I didn't write the slides, so I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
so I
argue
think,
the slides. The training deck
that's-
could certainly be modified. If I can, have you read all the comments for their recommendation on the changes of those?
where are their comments on
Oh,
the changes to the slides?
so yeah, that's part of the problem with the way that it's presented in PDF form. The Bodman firm did not redline edit them, but if you notice on, so for example, page 49 of 126, I think is where you first start seeing those red highlights. Each one of those red highlights is a comment from the Bodman firm on how they want that language modified. So I don't know if you've
No, I did not realize there were comments embedded in there.
Right. So, I mean, the version of the policy is redlined by Bodman, and the entire training deck is redlined by them as well.
Okay, yeah, I see some of those. And I haven't had a chance to look at some of these, but some of those are, I think, some good comments.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of their revisions.
Yes, like framing them as recommendations as opposed to saying you can't do that.
Any other council members?
I kind of agree with Steve on my end because, like I said, where I come from, I have to, if I put something on my own social media, I have to disclaim it because they monitor what I do. So I kind of agree with that statement.
I could probably be convinced either way. Like I don't really use social media that, to post village business anyway. So I do hear P&D's opinion of, we shouldn't be regulating what people should post on their private accounts. I still kind of do have like the lawsuit kind of concern if people do go post, pretty outrageous stuff. It could be a liability if it's not disclaimed.
If you want to discuss village matters on social media, have at it. Make sure you add a disclaimer unless you were authorized to post on our behalf. It's straightforward. You can share your opinions. Just make sure that you clarify they're your opinions. I agree. I don't really comment on social media about village-related matters, so I'm not really that worried about it. But if I did want to, I should have a disclaimer to make it clear that I'm not speaking for all of us. I'm speaking just as my own personal opinion.
So does council think this needs to go back for revision for the training deck or the amended, acknowledgement?
I mean, at a minimum, I would suggest that we can pass the social media policy, and the training deck itself can be modified without the social, because the social media policy says that there will be a training deck. We have a training deck, and that training deck could and should be further revised so we can see it with these red line changes in complete form, and we could review that later. Again, if we still have an issue with this social media policy, we still have to move forward with the handbook regardless. And
That's
then
fine.
go back and do this and the handbook again.
That's why I'm asking council.
Do we feel comfortable discussing what the acknowledgement form modifications would need to be acceptable? Or well, I guess let me ask first, Kim, do you know if am I correct that when we would disseminate the social media policy to all the other boards, that we always had something that they had to formally sign as a receipt of same? So would it not be appropriate that we continue that exact same practice for this same social media policy now that it's been amended? So that, I mean, that would make sense to the additional boards. It would then be appropriate to use obviously correctly amended language for all other employees, which then again applies to council as well as W-2 employees.
A point of clarification on distribution to boards, was that only boards that had access to websites or social media accounts? Like say, we have a couple new park board members. Have they received anything? We
No,
don't-
they haven't received any training or anything like that, but I don't know if they have access to the park board Facebook.
As far as I know, only one person does, so.
Well, wouldn't it be, Mr. President, wouldn't it be that we would have all boards come in and look at this, be trained, and acknowledge that they were trained? Because we're saying even on your personal level, you have to know you're representing us.
That was the plan. Yes.
But previously, that's not how it worked. Under a new policy, it's how it would work.
Right.
Previously, and it wasn't so much, it was a little bit Facebook, but it was really mostly, it started when Manager Connors was still here, when we got this room set up, when we started having other boards using YouTube and using our equipment for YouTube, which is where this started. I think insurance told us we had to do it, and it was an employment recommendation as well. So we would take our social media policy and give it to the board. That board would then put it on as an agenda item, formally review, vote to adopt, and agree to it, to be bound by it. That's how it worked previously. It wasn't individual signatures. This is not to have just formal board adoption. This is to every single individual that it is related to would then do that. That's the intention going forward.
But also needs to be adopted by the boards themselves.
That would be the
Correct.
next step.
That would be the next step, yeah.
That would be the next step.
Well, as to my opinion on whether or not we should proceed without seeing a draft of an acknowledgement form and a revised slide deck, I would advise that we wait until we have those things. But again, that's my opinion.
If just so I can understand, Mindy, not about the training deck, because I don't have any comments on the training deck. The acknowledgement form, in its current state, how it applies to directly to employees and then therefore village council members. What if we use the previous acknowledgement form for other boards, not this one, the one we've already had in place for other boards? What's the issue with that? I'm just trying to figure out what needs to be and how.
I don't know what that looks like.
Okay. What the other acknowledgement we've previously used says?
Yeah.
Okay. In truth, I haven't seen it recently either, so I don't know either.
Is it a consensus of council to table until those
Revisions are made.
revisions are available?
I don't consent to that because I think that this is a long time going, and I think that the acknowledgement form is something that we could hash out right now as to what the acknowledgement language would need to be modified to be acceptable, because I agree there it's problematic as drafted. They've got their bracketed quote inserts or other village related entity, obviously meant to be fillers for the appropriate person to be signing or appropriate entity to be signing. I think that that's modifiable, and it's not incredibly difficult for us to modify it. And I also think that it's not necessary that the training deck be complete at the time that we do this. The training deck needs to coincide with the approved policy. So approving the policy is what would come first. The training deck needs to mirror it and coincide with it. It does sound like the suggested corrections to it were acceptable. I think we just all want to see it in finalized form. Again, I'd like to not do the handbook now, have to disseminate it, have them sign it, and then come back and redo the social media policy, redo the handbook, and have them re-sign it again. It seems like a lot of additional staff time and a lot of effort, and a lot of printing for doing it twice. If we can just work out the acknowledgement form language.
I feel that the slide deck is important for implementation, and if we're signing something and we're not sure, we're requiring signing and making changes to an employee handbook without the implementation piece. Because I feel like the training deck is important for the trainer, whoever that may be. I don't know if that's Dale, if that's Kim.
No, it is Dale.
To fully understand the policy, to be able to explain it. I think it's important to have the whole picture in front of you instead of just pieces.
Mr. Kerberson, do you feel you don't understand the policy?
No, as you guys know, I wasn't involved in the creation of it. I'm not on social media at all, so I certainly understand the policy, the process, implementing it. I think we could easily come up with a tweaked acknowledgement for each group, but this is all, as you said, it's all, I plan to tell you tonight that we'll be ready to implement, train. We've got the trainers lined up for policies within the new handbook, and we would get the new handbook distributed. But as far as the social media policy, I don't know that I would be the best representative to teach it, to do the training deck, but we would definitely get it done.
When we discussed this at the subcommittee level, we took into consideration all of those things, that you weren't going to be putting on a seminar and teaching it, which is why we were creating a training deck in the first place that we were going to disseminate. And I mean, if there's any red line comments that are unacceptable or something that isn't red line that you feel should be, I'd love to just address that.
These are comments or red lines that the attorneys made?
Yes, the attorneys, this is the attorney's red lines to it
Right.
because it was
So
the
who
nature of it.
created the slide deck?
The subcommittee, so I mean, I think Angela's the one that put it together for us for the subcommittee. She created first drafts, we did revisions of our own, and then final from subcommittee went to Bodman. Bodman did their red lines of both the policy and the training deck to make sure they coincided.
Mhm.
So, I mean, they've got certain things in here, delete this entire line, add this instead. So for example, on page 52, where it says on personal posts, it says about Village Matters, must clarify that they represent only personal views. And so the Bodman firm changed that, it said delete that entire line and inserted should not be made on village websites and social media accounts. So I mean, they made substantive revisions to it.
Correct. And I think that's, in my view, I would like to see how we change that in a manner that complies with how we intend to implement a new policy.
So what I'm saying though is while it's not the most convenient way of seeing their red lines, they're
Right, and I
red
didn't
lines.
have an opportunity to review them line by line either. Not having that opportunity, it wasn't pointed out that there were comments.
At this point, I don't think council's comfortable with proceeding. Is it consensus by Stephen to table until next meeting and then go ahead and have to amend the handbook at the next meeting also?
I guess I do have a question though. I know that we feel the pressure of this handbook release coming.
Correct.
So I guess what's the compelling argument of why we have to approve the handbook tonight? I don't understand.
State law.
Okay.
You have 3 meetings. This is the 3rd meeting.
You have 3 meetings to,
Approve it.
or just stay with the current one?
I actually don't know what the or is. What is the or?
Well,
Or
it's to
throw
everything
comply
out
with
the
the
window,
current sick
or
time
what?
act.
So in the event that we do not pass the handbook tonight, what happens?
We do have something posted that we are complying with the Earned Sick Time Act.
By posting it in the copy room and
Yeah.
in the break room,
Mhm.
which in this context is not sufficient. It's minimal compliance, but this is strict compliance. This is not substantial compliance for the code. So
So the main driver though is the new state earned sick
Sick
leave
time.
policy that they shoved down everybody's throat.
mhm. That's why we were talking about it at the last meeting was there anything else? Because if so, it was going to put us jammed up if there was anything else.
Is there any other compelling arguments in the new handbook that couldn't wait? I know we
Mr.
were making
President.
revisions and updates.
Mr. Herberson.
May I ask the clerk, did this get tabled? Is that why we were on the 3 meeting? So that's why. But correct me if I'm wrong, because we have addressed it at the meetings and we are evolving it, doesn't that push out our 3 meetings? If it sits silent for 3 meetings, then it falls off the table.
Right, right.
So I think the fact that you're discussing it, it's been on the agenda, we've been reviewing it. That was my understanding of why we needed to have it done at this meeting. We had 3 meetings to push it out because it was tabled. So we can continue to table it, my opinion, I'm not the clerk. We could continue to table it because we have brought it to the table and we're taking it back off again.
Correct.
You're comfortable with that? So in essence, we're gonna table both tonight and bring them back on the agenda next meeting.
I mean, I think we need to clarify though, if we intend to table it, what we actually expect to happen so that we don't come back in the next 2 weeks and be right where we are tonight. Because last time it was, our only concern was constitutionality, and now there are additional concerns and there's zero clarification on who's expected to resolve any of those concerns. Because are we expected to then send this back to subcommittee and have subcommittee re-review and then have subcommittee resubmit to attorneys and then from attorneys back to here? I don't know what the expectation is. As I mentioned, I didn't draft it and I won't be editing it. So I don't know who's going to be.
Those are good questions. I mean, we are going to approve it without knowing those things either. And I think that's a concern.
Well, but hold on, my point is that if the red lines as presented were approved, I'm certain that the person that drafted it would make the necessary red lines. Right now, I have no idea what to tell them to do.
So all council members, call me. Was that?
But
Mr. Kerberson would like to.
Mr. President, just to clear this up, I think to move forward, we need to take care of the red lines, remove them from the deck so that we have a clean copy to produce for everyone to look at, and then say yes or no, we approve this training deck. The red lines came about after the review by our attorney, correct? So we should correct those items and present it as corrected. And then if there is something specific that there's an issue with, we get that out and get it dealt with. I think we can handle getting the red lines cleared out. The question would be, what would be the appropriate process to get this then out to the council for their individual comments back to, say, the clerk or the person that's doing the red line review, because we wouldn't want to have independent discussion. But if once the red lines are cleared up, everything's okay, then we would know that it would be okay to come back on the table at the next meeting. And it'd be complete. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you think that the red lines could be clarified by next Monday or Tuesday and give 3 or 4 days of independent reading, whatever feedback individually to the clerk for the deck.
I think that's very doable. The question comes in, if there becomes another big item that will require attorney review or something, then that will push it outside of the window of our next meeting.
Clerk has a copy of the deck, correct?
Just the PDF
But the
version.
same version we're all looking at. So, I mean, because that's the other thing. I mean, we're asking for volunteers to be doing
Right.
this work. That's the point. This is not an employment position that's doing this. This is volunteer time that's doing this. So, I mean, can it be done? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to dictate a volunteer's timeline. I mean, you know what I mean? Is it possible? I'm sure it's possible. Is that person willing to sacrifice their personal time in a short timeline? I'm not going to speak for that person. I don't know. I would think probably. It's not. I drafted the policy. Angela drafted the training deck. I think it's in PowerPoint, and I think that's why there's a PDF version of it that was supplied. And I think that's why the Bodman firm couldn't edit it. And they chose to insert comments for their red lines. And they tried to identify that with those red spots. And they said, sorry, we couldn't edit it, so it was just strict red lines, but these are our red lines. And I'm sorry if that wasn't clarified before, but that's their red line. So, I mean, I was taking it as these are their specific red lines to it that then make it mirror their red lines to the policy itself. So,
Can council simplify and council reread the decks with the red lines with understanding without having it to be cleaned up?
well, look, if we're delaying so that it can be cleaned up, let's clean it up. But to say that it's going to be done in an even shorter timeline is where I think, like, maybe we can ask.
Yeah.
We can ask. Do we have the expectation that somebody's going to take their own free time to do this, on a short timeline? I think that's questionable. I mean, we can ask, but I don't think you're going to go any further than that. I think to say we could read these comments to see if we still agree with it, we could have done that for the last 2 weeks. So I don't see the point in delaying to do the same thing.
I think there was some confusion on council from that, miscorrecting the understanding that those were legal changes, recommended.
Did not
changes.
realize there were any changes,
But
recommended
they
or
just
otherwise,
highlighted the words for.
that they were just highlighted for some other
Reason.
reason. Yeah.
Okay, so to get this meeting back in line, we're going to table this tonight. We're going to table the handbook tonight, and then we'll work in the background to try and get a revised training deck out to see, and then have council members submit the opinions back to the clerk.
So how is that not deliberation if we do that?
Because you're responding to the clerk and nobody else. So I can condense the concerns or comments and provide that at the next council meeting.
Well,
So then what value does that have other than us just stating them ourselves at the next meeting?
Very true.
But it progresses nothing, right? It's still, we just show up and say, here's our list of concerns. We would still then be
Well-
just discussing our concerns at the next meeting.
as an example, if there was something after it's cleaned up and reviewed that is now highlighted an issue, we would know about it and be able to either propose a change to bring to the next meeting or not. I'm assuming based on the fact that Bodman has reviewed it and you've reviewed it, there won't be anything significant. It'll just be clear because it was unclear before this evening.
I mean, I'm just trying not to assume that's wishful thinking.
It is wishful thinking.
In the event that there were something greater, that's all I'm trying to establish here is in the event there were something greater, it would need to potentially go back to the Bodman firm again. And that's what the hopes of doing it on that faster timeline would be leave enough time to take it back to the Bodman firm and get the Bodman firm to come back to us and be able to present that at the next meeting. Is that essentially the concept? My only concern with that concept is that it's typically the council votes on what they want that legal opinion to be, because requesting a legal opinion can be a very narrowly tailored question by one council member, and then upon discussion, that question becomes expanded. I'm just worried about that comes up and they go, oh, well, that makes me think of 3 other facets of that very same problem. And I'm just worried about it causing further delay in that way.
Well, and that has been this process all along.
Yes, which is why we've been doing this for 6 months. So, okay.
To me, it's more important that we have it right than we hurry through something. I understand the changes that are needed for compliance with the sick time revisions. That makes sense, but trying to tie this and make it a rush when there are questions doesn't make sense to me. So
I'm sorry that you feel rushed by it. It's not as though we've done anything in a rush. I mean, it's been before us now twice. So, and I'm not in any way indicating I want to do it wrong or rush it. I'm simply trying to figure out what the best, most efficient way forward is so we don't continue to experience more delays. We just want to make sure that we can do it in an efficient manner because it's been ongoing for quite a long time.
Well, and one little kernel of information now that I know this was PDF'd, so Bodman couldn't, maybe we can get it in a editable form next time around so we can move through all these things. Then again, I didn't know that was a problem till this evening.
We're going to table both and figure out the logistics going forward. Consensus?
yes.
That ends our regular agenda. Now is the time for public comment or any non-agenda items or any public comment for non-agenda items. Being none, open discussion, utility billing.
So at the March 4th meeting, council requested some additional information. The feasibility of online access to water usage data, analyzing costs of bi-monthly billing, investigating the possibility of a fixed meter reading system, and exploring investment returns as a potential funding source, and research the possibility of offering automatic payments, or ACH as it's called. So the first, there is a customer portal that the vendor does provide. However, the initial cost is anywhere between $14,000 and $24,000 with an annual fee of $700 to $9,300. The vendor specifically does not recommend it as there has only been 6% adoption in all the other municipalities. I mean, it's a cool app, but getting people to use
I
it.
have no idea why they didn't adopt it at $24,000 to start.
Yes, it is. It's a hefty cost. So I would recommend not getting that. The bi-monthly billing, I did 4 scenarios, just like the monthly billing, with part-time help and a $4.50 admin fee added to each bill. There would be no impact to the capital savings. If we added just the part-time with no admin fee, it would impact capital savings by approximately 29,300 annually. Now, perfect example is the flex rate. If we didn't have that additional funds to fix the emergency repairs, it's a budget impact. The third scenario was no part-time help with $1 admin fee. There's no capital savings impact. However, that puts a big strain on the current staff, increasing the number of times to process water billing. And no part-time help and no admin fee, it would affect capital savings by $13,200. Again, that's putting an awful strain on the current staff. So we have to weigh customer convenience versus financial sustainability. And I know it was asked about using interest income as a funding source. I wouldn't recommend that as a primary source, possibly a secondary source, just because it can be so volatile. If you look at the 2008 crisis, COVID, interest rates plummeted and we got little to no income. Right now it's good. However, it's just so variable that it's hard to rely on to use as a cost buffer. The fixed meter reading system, we got a quote, it's $90,400 with a $6,400 annual fee, which is 239.5% higher than our current annual fee. So budgetarily, I can't see where we would save in in the DPW costs on that. So and ACH, I'm still working with the bank. I just have to clarify a few things with her, but we might be able to provide that at a no fee to our customers. I just want to confirm that before I say officially that we can provide that with no fee.
That would be shocking. that,
Right.
that you could do ACH for free. I mean,
Right.
I'm all for it. I really hope so. That'd be great. But I'm not aware of nearly any payment processing systems that don't have at least a 2.6 to 3.5% charge.
Right.
And that's kind of the issue. That's kind of the issue that we have now is, because it's not you're paying a $3 flat fee for it. It's you're paying a basis of an already rather large transaction, which
Right.
makes it kind of indefensible to try to use that.
Yeah, but if the fee that the bank would charge us is nominal, we could provide that, to our customers.
I guess clarification, who's providing the ACH processing?
It would be our bank. So we would pull.
So there are some banks that do take, even the state of Michigan,
Mhm.
if you do an e-check, basically is
Yeah.
what it is, you can pay your tabs for free. If you use a credit card, you get your
Don't disagree.
ding with the big old 3% or whatever it is, or $35.
I'm not trying to think about this from the back end. I'm thinking about this from the user end. So are we talking about, because like right now, the ability to pay it is through BSNA, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
And
so-
that still would be an option.
So it's, right, but that's the one where we're paying that significant charge. So
Correct.
if the concept is ACH fee and it was through our bank, how does the user use that? Because it's not going to be through BSNA, right?
And
There's
and
not going to be an
again-
online portal.
Mhm.
So how does that work? I
Well,
mean, even
that
if it's
would
free.
increase our liability, I believe,
Mhm.
because the customers would have to provide their banking information to us.
Which is a significant
we
liability
store.
increase.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
we store and we process on our end their stored information.
Correct.
So nightmare of a liability. And what system do we have in place for storing such data right now?
Well, it's through our BSNA system.
So we're still gonna process it through BSNA, just on our end through our own ACH?
Correct.
All right, that makes a little more sense. But, so does that criteria then get stored in BSNA?
Yes.
I mean, that's a robust system that makes things a little simpler. It just, that means that you then say 60% of them signed up. You then have that many hundreds of payments to manually process, or are you going to be able to bulk that?
It would be one ACH file that gets transmitted to the bank.
And they're just going to process everybody that's in it at the appropriate amounts. And it's not going to go wrong. 'Cause that,
Many municipalities use it.
okay.
Many highly recommend it, but I'm just not familiar with the logistics of how it is.
Fair enough. There's just, unfortunately, that's the curiosity I have
Right.
behind that, is because I'm well aware of what it's going to be like on the back end of how we intend to do it. But, you know, how does it work on the user end? And what you're basically saying on the user end, it's nothing. You provide us your ACH info. On the back end is where we're going to have to do all that detailed work. And I just worried about, so while it may not come at a cost to the user for the payment processing, it is going to come at a cost because you're still going to have additional staff time potentially. Not if you can do it by batch.
Yeah, right. Not necessarily. So we would do it all in one batch. So I think it would save us a lot of time, actually. So we didn't have to manually enter in each payment.
Right.
It would just pull in and automatically
Right.
post to each individual account. So I think it would be more efficient staff-wise to do that.
So, I mean, this would almost be the equivalent of just setting up a utility on auto pay, right? Would be the
Correct.
very concept.
Correct.
And they're still going to receive their statements and their invoices.
Correct.
So they're still going to have a heads up about what those costs are. And it has the opposite effect of what I'm worried about, where you're saying it might actually decrease staff time. Because
Correct.
you mentioned a lot before about the impact it's going to have on staff time, burdening them. This would actually potentially decrease that burden.
Correct.
Okay. I'm satisfied with that.
So, but we still have the opportunity to send the message, though, that if you want to pay your water bill on a monthly basis,
Yes. Yes. And
you
I
can,
will
come
still,
up and can they come up and see what their last year has been
Absolutely.
and average it and say, I'm going to pay $150 a month or whatever
yeah,
it
because
is?
currently we put it in with, as a notice in with the tax bill every year, saying, this is what your average was, this is what we estimate, you
This is
know.
the proration, right?
Yes.
That was the decision before, was that there'd be a prorated, so they would always have a monthly billing option. That the monthly billing option has always existed, but it's on a proration, not actual exact use.
And
Was
But
one of the
see, that,
concerns.
that's the big complaint is people I don't think realize that they have that prorated rate that they could come pay.
Oh, I
Oh,
totally
my-
agree.
my staff, every water bill that comes in, they say, you can make payments on this, weekly. I mean, we do have a person that pays weekly. We'll take payments as often as they want. And if they want us to break it down for them, we certainly can do that.
So I mean, it's as much of a messaging from our part as it is make it convenient. I do like the ACH idea though.
Anybody else?
Some of the what we were considering with the more transparent options were that so people could log in and see what their usage was, so they would have a better idea of what their bill would be.
Yes.
But that just
Yeah,
wasn't
and
a-
I mean, the
wasn't a good
app,
system.
the app
Nice.
sounds very, very cool. You can set up alerts. You can set up, like, I'm gonna be gone during this time. If there's any usage, text me. It's a very cool system, but not a lot of people use it.
And the cost of setting it up would also massively increase everyone's
I
water bills.
was shocked at how,
So then
expensive
they're
that
going to be
was.
even more angry when we do pay for it and they log in to see those water bills are even higher now.
So, yeah, Kim, I had a few questions about some of the costs that were detailed.
Sure.
under, let's see, recurring costs.
Yes.
So for billing, clerk time, and fringe benefits, they keep track of their hours, and that comes out of the water and sewer fund. Is that correct? And then for DPW, reads and shutoffs. Can you explain where those numbers come from?
Yeah, give me 1 second. It was based on the estimated times, that they currently, take to do the reads and to do the shutoffs.
Each employee that does that, their time is scheduled, recorded, and then, as you said, back billed to.
For the shutoffs, yeah, that's easy to track. I wasn't sure about the reads.
Yep,
Yeah,
so
same way.
to read the meters, it takes one employee about 3 hours. Rereads, where we couldn't get a read, it was a questionable read, that can take 1 to 2 hours depending on how many. There are, meter changes and posting on the door, that takes about an hour and a half. Shutoffs, it usually takes 4 guys, 1 day to do shutoffs.
And so we're kind of assuming that we'll have the same number of shutoffs as
Right.
before.
Right. Because I don't know how this would affect, because 95% of our shutoffs are the same.
That are
Customers.
habitual offenders, right? So,
And then, so for the reads, like the system that was sold to us was that they would capture this data as they were doing their work. But for every billing cycle, they're doing 3 additional hours to go.
To purposely
Collect.
go through the entire village to ensure that they get all of the reads.
So that's not happening as it was presented to us originally. Like, we have to intentionally go drive the whole thing.
Right, right.
I don't know if you remember this,
Well,
Tim.
yeah.
It was said
No, I
that,
remember.
oh, this is going to be good because we won't have to do any extra. We'll collect the data through the course of our business.
Before they were going house to house and-
Right, that, the difference would be house to house versus driving down the street and getting it at one time, but there is,
At one time it was probably taking them 10 hours.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a scenario where when we get a peculiar read, we go back and pull a large amount of data that gives us minute or hour by hour reads that we can then let the people know, hey, your spike is at this time, or it's a consistent
Mhm.
leak. That system has been very effective.
And don't get me wrong, every quarter is different, right? Like right now, we're doing brush chipping. So we are going around the entire village. So
Mhm.
that read time would probably be less.
Where there wouldn't be.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
So that does fluctuate. So they're not
Yes.
always needing to
Correct,
go traverse the whole village.
correct.
They are collecting that as they're going about their day. Okay. And equipment rental?
Oh, the
Is that the
cost
cost of the-
associated with the vehicles to do the reads, that type of thing.
Okay. And then manager time. So Manager Curvison, are you billing time that you spend talking to people about their water bills? To the-
Specifically, there is, my time isn't pulled out,
Okay.
but it's just the fact that weekly I spend time working with people for anything from a payment plan to doing exactly what we just said, where, you know, back when Farm and Home had a problem, I probably spent 35 hours on that over 4 or 5 months.
Right. So,
But some of
but
my
you're not
time,
billing it.
some of my time is billed to each of those systems.
I think that might be the only one that may actually go down, is if people are having more regular bills. Hopefully they won't need to make payment plan arrangements if they're getting billed either monthly or on an every other month basis. That's, I don't know what payment plan we'd be able to give them for a monthly, if we would move to a monthly billing, and then.
Does it just
Every other
increase in frequency? Because if it's the same people having difficulty doing that and being in payment plans, I don't know that increasing the rate of payment would negate the necessity for negotiating and discussing payment plans. It might just increase the frequency of those conversations. It could go either way, but I don't know that we could determine that it would be less time just because we're doing it more frequently.
Yeah, I think that's probably just an unknown. And it's not always being billed directly to water sewer, is my understanding. Sometimes. Is that accurate, that sometimes you bill your time to water and sewer? If you're talking,
My time is billed every single paycheck. A portion of my time goes to that. We busted that all up a while ago to spread my costs over all the departments as I interact.
okay, so would not necessarily generate an increase unless we decide that's an increase, correct?
I'm not sure
So
what
this
your
is
question
showing that going to this would cost us $483.80 more. But that would not actually be the case unless we change the proportion of your time to water and sewer bills,
Right.
correct?
Because then it would have to increase my demand, so then we'd up that.
Right, so that's a choice, not an automatic given.
But what do you mean the choice of whether or not he allocates his time appropriately to that fund?
It would be a choice in reallocation of his hours.
Well, if he's spending time doing that, he allocates those hours to it. Are you proposing that if he were to spend the equivalent amount of time or more time, he should not bill that? I
No,
don't
I'm
understand what the
saying-
choice is.
No, I'm saying like, this does not automatically go up based on hours he's billing. It would be a choice to say, oh, I've been spending more time, therefore we should increase the proportion of my salary that goes to water and sewer.
Is it a choice now or is it fact-based? Are you allocating a percentage of your actual time? So it's not really a choice, it's a factual matter, right? I mean, no matter what, these are estimates, so I agree we can't say it will or will not go up, but I don't think that it's a choice. It's if there's more time, then the cost goes up. If the time's the same, it's the same, right?
There's no choice. It's if it's demanded or not demanded.
Right.
And that's not a choice. That's.
I guess the choice is we reevaluate it.
Well,
Who reevaluates what?
We would reevaluate this
Okay.
entire thing as it
Right.
goes on, but I can't think, we can't dictate to him if he's spending 2 hours or 6 hours a week on water and sewer stuff if the job demands it. I don't think that's a choice. I think it's like my job.
I think you guys are taking it too far. All I'm saying is that it doesn't automatically go up.
Agreed, we can't dictate any of these
Correct.
automatically.
It does
Yeah.
not
right.
automatically,
No.
some of these costs automatically go up. Printing automatically goes up. Correct. Manager's salary proportion does not automatically go up. That's the only
Oh, gotcha, okay.
point that I was trying to make here. I was just trying to get a breakdown of like, which are things that
Are fixed and which
are fixed,
flexible.
yes, and potentially
So
flexible.
Did you have any other questions?
I don't believe so about the breakdown that we saw here. Kim, you did mention interest income as a funding source. And I appreciate that you looked at that and kind of provided those numbers to us. It wasn't necessarily meant to be framed as a funding source, just as, we're looking at a proposal that potentially has an impact on the water and sewer funds. We made decisions to increase our investment that was a positive. And so I was looking at this more of, we try and find efficiencies where we can and do the best we can with the money. We did make those decisions, so we do have a little bit more money to play with right now because things are going good. And I think your point is valid, is that could go the other way, but I don't think it's a dedicated funding source. It's just a variable to consider, that we're doing good on our investments. It's leading to more money in our capital improvement fund or just overall fund. Are we able to use that positive as a way to offset, sort of like, yes, we do agree that this is going to take money out of the capital improvement program or plan if we implement it, because it does cost more to print more bills and spend more time. However, we've made these changes to try and offset that cost or impact on the capital improvement program. So that's sort of why I asked to get those numbers. And I think it is important for us to know. And not every change that we make can save money. Sometimes we have to make changes that cost more money for the benefit of our citizens. And I'm going to get on my soapbox just a tiny bit, if you guys will indulge me here. The number one complaint everyone has about this town is the water bill. It is something we can control. We can make better customer experience for people to make it easier to pay, easier to see more frequently how much water you're using, so you can make individual choices. Making it on a quarterly basis is tough. You don't have a lot of time to react. If you can see what usage you have, you get more feedback, you can make decisions accordingly. I don't know if any of you have ever had to struggle to pay bills, but it is tough. And I think it is our job to try and make our citizens' lives easier. And this is an easy fix to me. So, end of my speech. I don't know if anybody had any other comments. I don't want to take up all the time.
Any other comments?
I'm very hesitant about implementing either an additional administration fee just for the optics of getting a water bill, seeing even if it's $1 fee, almost. I guess I would see it like as a joke. How can the village not absorb a $1 cost if
I
we
agree
were?
with that, but like Kim said, if we implement it without any fee, then we're not fixing the flex rate tonight. So where is the balance of, where is that balance? Because to tell you the truth, if you're going bi-monthly, that's an additional almost $9 a month just paying fees to get your water, to get billed more. And that's not gonna fly, but at the same time, to take a $29,000 or $13,000 hit on your capital improvement funding, that's not acceptable either.
I see zero benefit to this plan right now. I mean, it's so that we can increase the costs to send them bills sooner, when we could be giving them weekly, monthly, different payment plans for free, a service we offer right now. This does nothing but add costs for a devolved version of what we already offer. I just don't see the overall benefit of it. If you wanted to have the ability to pay monthly or bi-monthly or weekly, that option already exists, and potentially even with ACH payments at no cost. I mean, the ACH payments sounds like a very beneficial, positive thing that we could potentially do, and potentially at no additional cost. But this does nothing more than add fees or strain the staff or add more staff or harm the capital improvement fund, which is the whole reason why we raised water prices so much in the first place. It's going in the wrong direction in all ways.
We say, if using the argument that we should not spend money billing people, why not we annually bill people for the water? So think about how much money we would save.
I'm not saying we shouldn't bill them at all. I'm saying that doing it this way increases costs. And if it was,
Yeah.
they want to have a larger frequency of payment options, that is something we offer already.
I agree. I think there is a marketing campaign in here that we're not taking the opportunity of. I mean, granted, we spend probably the better part of an hour discussing social media policy. Probably maybe we should use social media to get like a, hey, this is what you can do to pay your water bill, and we'll even work with you to give you an estimated weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever, and help you make it fit your budget type situation. Like, do you realize you use this much and this is how much it costs you on a weekly basis type thing?
At the least, I think that's the first step.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It has to be much better than what we've done and just put one.
I
line
don't
and-
disagree. Don't disagree. It needs to like be spread far and wide as best we can to make people aware that, you know, there is the potential to help you understand what your cost is. It's kind of like, do you know how much you pay on a monthly basis for your electricity, right?
Yeah, you
Th-
do,
they're-
because you get a monthly bill.
Well, but at the same time, they call you, they send you stuff, both consumers and DTE, saying, if this is too much, we'll work with you to give you an estimated biweekly payment to cover your estimated last year's cost of electricity or gas. So I think it's available for water. It's not out there as common knowledge that everybody could come and sit down and talk.
I think in addition to that, there's definitely a gap of education in the residents of why the water bills are so much higher than surrounding areas. I think that's a big source of confusion for a lot of people.
Yeah, and people move from areas where they're used to getting every other month bills or taking advantage of economy of scale because they have a discharge to the largest wastewater treatment plant in North America as opposed to our little wastewater treatment plant.
Well, and also population density. I mean, you move to Elmont because you have a 2-acre, 5-acre, 10-acre piece of property, maybe not in the village, 2 acres, maybe. You don't have somebody though 5 feet out your door on all 3 or 4 sides, paying water bills where you're all on top of each other.
Well, that's what amounts to the economy of scale that she's mentioning. But I mean, hey, for at least the next 2 weeks, we can all feel free to blast this all over social media without a disclaimer. So we can all create our own
I might
marketing
take
campaign.
advantage of it while I still can.
What about, I know this has come up too, but I obviously like the ACH too, but kind of like even how we do like homecoming, right? Where we take that money from Garage Sale Frenzy and we put it into the kitty. That's always been a thought where some people have always asked is why can't we use some of these other things that we're collecting for and put it towards the water bill to offset it versus collecting for other
It's
entities.
got to go to the capital improvement
Right.
plan. We have pretty strong statutory restrictions on what we can
Statutory
do.
restrictions on what you
Right.
can do.
You move it from one fund to another fund, that's called fraud.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I know that was one of the thoughts. It's
That
just-
is, yeah, frequently expressed is that
Right.
water and sewer fees are going to fund other things. Like
Absolutely not, yeah.
we hear the opposite of that over and over and over again. It's really frustrating because not understanding municipal budgeting and funding, that money can only go towards water and sewer.
If you're gonna follow one of these plans, which one would you recommend?
My recommendation is, well, I mean, I hate to say it, but, sorry, I'm losing this. I would say that we go with the one that I can't see right now because my computer lost my page here. I don't think we should have an administrative fee. I think that this is part of the service that we provide. and it's built into our system. I think we could encourage people to get bills emailed to save on some of those costs. Make a commitment. I'll make a request tomorrow to have my emailed instead of sent. You can via mail. I think some outreach on that is important and can save on some costs. I would not recommend we go immediately to hiring a new staff person until we figure out exactly what we need and how many hours it would take. So I'm still looking for what option that is.
Bi-monthly billing with no administrative fee and no additional part-time help. Would approximately hit the capital improvement fund at 13.2.
So I think there's some opportunity here to leverage some of like the ACH and then maybe like seeing what, you know, if we could actually do that, how much time would that save? Would that open up time for someone that we would have hired to instead do bi-monthly billing?
So is it, and I know Mindy's answer, but is it a consensus of council to move forward and putting one of these on the agenda next time? Or is it consensus of council to have staff come up with a better marketing plan to inform our consumers?
Say marketing plan.
Well, and Kim, can you work on that? Bring it back up in discussion next meeting? You got enough time in 2 weeks to do that?
I will certainly try.
We want them to bring the marketing plan to us for approval? Is that what you're suggesting?
At least for discussion.
I'm not
Yeah.
objecting, I'm just
Yeah,
clarifying.
so, yeah, yes.
We don't typically approve their social media posts, so that's technically under this new policy up to Dale.
What,
It's not
what we'll
necessarily
do
a
is
post, but a
update you
comprehensive.
on what we come up with to get it out there,
Okay,
as I do
okay,
other things.
okay. Anybody else on this subject? Okay, before we move on to
Tim, I have
Okay,
one comment.
yes.
I mean, I understand we're moving forward on consensus that this is not going anywhere. I would have liked a vote on this.
if you're asking it to be put on the next agenda, then put it on the next agenda and we will have a motion and see where it goes.
For bi-monthly building?
Bi-monthly billing at the no administrative fee with the $13,000 head, $13,002 head.
Correct.
And continue with the marketing plan.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna take a 1-minute break and have the students come up and get their things signed so they can go home and do their homework.
Oh, wait. This is the most entertaining they've had in weeks. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, you came to a good
I picked the
meeting.
wrong one.
They're like, we didn't want to come to the long meeting.
If you would've came to the planning commission meeting on Thursday, you would've been on your bike. How are you today?
Good idea. Thank you. You too.
There you go. You're welcome.
Not at all. Thank you. You too.
Second open discussion item is the homecoming committee bylaws, and I will cede to the committee to discuss that.
Their bylaws. Subcommittee did its best to revise and modify the existing bylaws that we essentially revoked previously. Was that back in December, January? So we've thoroughly expanded them. I don't want to try to dive into every bit of it, all the details, but we specifically tried to address the complaints that were previously raised, OMA violation concerns, bring it into compliance, set up appropriate structure, appointments, overall change the functioning of it. We've gone over it twice. And Clerk Treasurer Kiesler had a lot of great feedback and added a couple more modifications based off of her input as well. So this is our approved draft for council's first review and consideration before we try to place it on the regular agenda. Because again, it is a time-sensitive issue because we were told by members of the previous homecoming committee who've served on it for decades that it takes them over a year to do planning. And since we had adjourned it from this year to the following year, we are now putting them in jeopardy of even being able to organize for next year because of the timing. So it is time sensitive. Hopefully we can, if there's any concerns with it, we can raise those now so that we can actually fix them by the next meeting.
I just had a real small picky thing, if no one else has got anything. Page 2 of 6, committee shall formally adopt and comply with the village council's social media policy. I think it's probably just the village's social media policy.
I don't disagree with you. That certainly sounds like a correction that should be made. Where?
It's 119 of the packet, I think, page 2 of 6 of the.
Yes.
What bullet in?
Yeah, well, yeah, what,
It's near the bottom, section 2A.
Yeah, correct. It was supposed, it's not, it actually not, village councils. It should be Village of Almont's social media policy. Agreed. Absolutely.
I think I noted here that it leaves to some discretion on planning as opposed to dictating when the festival occurs, correct? I think that was a real good change. Yeah.
It's gonna be loved and hated at the same time.
Yeah. It leaves flexibility.
Which is- That's what the consensus was essentially at the subcommittee, is that we need to be able to move it for different various reasons. If it can stay the when it always was, great. But if we have construction projects, if we have other conflicts, if we have a lack of participation, a lack of funding, there could be a million things that could go wrong where we shouldn't be so rigid. Because rather than canceling it outright because we can't carry it out on that specific date and time, we want to leave it variable where, hey, we could still pull it off, but we need to do it 3 months earlier or 3 months later.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was a good change.
I would like to, Manager Kerberson, have you had a chance to review these yet?
I looked at the front page.
Fantastic. I would like you to know that in here, we did make it, they're responsible for enacting a safety plan, which must be presented to the village manager and approved by the village manager, because you're going to essentially be the main contact point for communications with police department, emergency services, making sure everything's done appropriately, making sure liability insurance is obtained, making sure MDOT approvals are obtained. Like, you're our final safeguard for those things being done. And I did browbeat Clerk Treasurer Kiesler into maintaining her role as treasurer, so that we can maintain fiscal stability.
Just shouldn't be so good at your job, Ken.
But I was just going to ask a quick question. Now, you have a committee that did this, a subcommittee. Are they also now the volunteers that are this group?
Good God, no.
Okay.
No.
So did we run an ad asking for people
No.
to volunteer? for
No.
this?
Not
No.
yet.
No.
Okay.
The agreed upon structure was, first things first, we got rid of the old bylaws, disbanded the committee. Then subcommittee had to be appointed. Subcommittee has to approve bylaws. Bylaws have to be approved by village council. Then you get to place an ad to fill, because that's my whole point is we know they need to start planning. So it's taken us all these months to get to first draft review, then we have to final draft review, then you have to post, then we have to fill the board, then they get to plan. We'll be lucky if they're planning by August. So that might be hyperbole, but my point is just that it's taken a while.
Okay.
I have one question about if the committee was dissolved, funds would be absorbed by the village. There wasn't a provision for returning any donations that I saw. Was that something that the committee discussed at all, or it's just that?
No, this mirrors the spirit and intent of the previous bylaws.
Okay.
And I believe that that's necessary. Although I'm not sure, you're clarifying the difference between what's in the fund as donations versus other potential sources of funding. I don't know if it's even tracked and separated that way, because my understanding is that these funds are just part of our general fund. Is that correct?
Right, the garage sale permits
Right.
are.
Correct.
Or the primary
And they're,
source?
yeah, and they're in a separate account.
Right. And so my understanding of it from the legality part of it is any of these, because it is a village entity, and any of these funds, if dissolved, must be returned to the village, must go back to general fund is essential concept, so that we don't get into the.
Right, but I was just saying, like, because we have to track who donates, like, that all has to be tracked. So say planning had commenced, companies donated money, and then suddenly everything fell apart. Would we just keep that money, or is there a mechanism to return that money to the donors?
I haven't the slightest clue, and I'm not sure that's a bylaws question,
Okay.
because I think that well, for one, I don't know that that's a bylaws question. I think that that's, I mean, do you have any idea, Kim?
Well, I wouldn't think you would dissolve in the middle of planning.
Yeah, I would hope not.
But she's right. I mean, I guess
But-
it's, while impractical and improbable, I guess it is a potential reality where we've been spending 8 months planning and therefore soliciting, collecting potential donations, and then something happens, it
Or
falls
over
apart.
5 years, I don't know.
And it, well, right, because it,
I mean,
and it
we don't
dissolves.
get a lot of donations outside of when they start planning.
But I think there's a question between once a donation is made and then it's accepted by the municipality, those funds are essentially converted and become municipal property. I don't know that municipalities have the right to return those, because then it becomes,
Yeah, I'm just asking the question. I don't have an opinion as
We're
to
doing stuff for
legality.
Heritage Fest. We were planning on some of the stuff, we were not gonna return it.
right, I don't,
Yeah.
I would have to research this, I have no idea, but I don't, my gut feeling is I don't think the municipality can return it, because it starts to become a fund issue. Once it's converted to municipal funds, it's municipal funds. I don't know that we can return donations. Either way, I don't think that would be something that would be appropriate to be a bylaw provision. I think that needs to be village policy versus state statute, IRS regulation. There's a bunch of other superseding things there, I would think. That's a complex
I mean,
one.
does it just
Sorry-
become
sorry to, like-
earmarked funds for the event, whether it happens that year or?
But this
No, this is in the event of dissolution of the
That's what I'm
homecoming.
saying. I'm saying is, once it's earmarked for that event, whether it happens or not, it doesn't go back. It just gets earmarked for the next time the event happens.
No, what she's saying is the event would never happen again because it's dissolved. She's saying in the event we say there is no more homecoming committee and there is not going to be any more homecomings, if it were dissolved, what funds we're holding for it, if some of those were donations, can we return them, or do they just carry over to the general fund, well, back to the village? And the previous was it went back to the
Just
village.
back to the village.
I don't know that you can make a distinction and say, well, actually, this chunk of it was donations, so we're returning this to the people who donated it. I
Don't know.
question the legality of it, but again,
We wouldn't track it that way.
agreed, you would have to start tracking it that way just to do that. I don't know that it's even legal, but again, I think my point remains, while that is a very good question, I feel that it would be inappropriate to place, even if you can legally do such a thing, to place that in these bylaws, because I think that there's many things that supersede these bylaws would be the more appropriate place to address that as a
Some
village
type of
policy,
policy, yeah.
as state law, whatever the superseding authority is on that. I would not want to put anything in here that would potentially invalidate it.
I'll
Up
research
to
it.
you guys. I'll just like throw the bomb in the room.
It's- Pull the pin on the grenade and read.
I had a question on Article 5, Event Planning, Section 1, B, saying that the plan has to be submitted to Village Council for approval at least 1 year prior to the festival. A, historically, has that been done? B, practically, is that possible? C, what's the rationale for having it at least 1 year before?
So when I don't know that any formal appropriate planning, presentations, budgets, meeting minutes, quite literally anything was ever done previously. The point is to eliminate that because that was in violation of OMA in certain regards where things aren't done that way, at least allegedly or hypothetically they would be. The very concept is if they start planning typically 16 to 14 months in advance, they should be able to give us a comprehensive plan of what they intend to do. It would not be finite numbers. It's not, we already have approvals, but we're planning on having the parade. We're planning on having the ice cream social. We're planning on doing it on these potential dates. Because again, because the time frame of when you're going to have this take place is variable, we want to know that well in advance and coordinate. Maybe we want to structure other projects, other things to leave that gap in time available for them. We've got to have some approval overall of the big picture process as well. And it would need to be comprehensive, and we need to know where your budget's at, and we need to know some of those details. So,
And I think one of the problems that came out with the questioning of the original bylaws is village council was sitting here, that this committee that was legally bound to the village council, and we didn't monitor or didn't know any of the actions that were being taken. And I think this is corrective action for that.
keep in mind, it does say that it has to be submitted to us. It does not say has to be approved by us. So if they submitted it and it was insufficient and we said we need more, they've still met the demand by getting that ball rolling, telling us everything that they're supposed to be telling us. The whole point is to get them involved in the submission process to us so that we start to be able to lay eyes on what their intentions are and to try to have an idea of the dates, the frequency, the totality of the event, the budget. And certainly that far out, there's going to be unknowns. But don't we want to know what those unknowns are that far ahead so that way we can be monitoring and tracking, be involved, have that oversight? That's the whole point, was to design it that way, because you're absolutely right. It's logistically, if it had to be approved by village council a year in advance, that I agree would not be realistically possible. Submitting where you are at that point comprehensively, it should be acceptable, right? To tell us everything you can about those particular topics a year in advance, right? And anything they can't, we can give them leeway and we'd have discretion.
Should we change the wording to submitted to the village council for review instead of approval then?
But must be submitted for approval. It doesn't say must be approved. I just want to be clear. We have the ability to approve it if it was sufficient. Their requirement is to submit for approval, not it must be approved. It says must be submitted. I just want to clarify because we do want to try to approve. If we can't, and because there's some gap in knowledge or information, they will have complied with the bylaws by submitting it to us for that approval. Not they had to complete the approval 1 year in advance. I just want to clarify because we don't want to say shall submit, but there's no requirement for any approval of any kind. It's submit for approval, but I'm definitely open to tweaking the language with what would make more comfortable. I was just trying to clarify what the spirit and intent was.
So council does have to approve it at some point.
Yes, at some point, certainly. Right, because for example, council has to approve the date is a good example, as well as several other various aspects that we need to have oversight on. So at some point, yes, we need to approve. Just as well as the village manager plays a key role in lots of approvals of the safety planning and making sure certain coordination is done. He'd be reporting back to us. The clerk treasurer is going to report back to us with financial reports. We'd be getting lots of information from the board itself and from our own administration. And we would again have what we should have had from the beginning, which is direct oversight and involvement. So yes, approval at some point. We didn't put a deadline on when approval has to happen. We put a deadline when submission has to be made. Because yeah, I imagine the first time we're doing this, maybe we have to go for approval 3-4 times because we're all going to be learning together, you know, what the downfalls may be. And the only thing that would make no sense is to put it too close to the festival, to put it too far out. 1 year seemed an appropriate amount of time to get that submission ball rolling, and it is for approval. But if it's not approved at that 12-month mark, they've still substantially complied with the bylaws. They met their submission. Didn't say that they had to have it approved by then, but they had to submit it for approval.
Anybody else? I'd like to thank the committee for their efforts. And if there's no other things, then we'll move forward with bringing it back.
I do want to ask Councilmember Powell, do you, given all of that verbal vomit that I just put on that, do you still recommend any? I'm very open to any modifications to it. We want feedback from council. So if you still, after I said all that, think that you want to tweak this in any way, I'm open to it.
No, I agree. It does have to be approved at some point. So
Okay.
I agree with the wording.
Any other questions or concerns from council? If not, this is open discussion, so we'll put it on the next agenda for final approval. That concludes our open discussion. Council manager comment, Mr. Kerberson.
I will be brief, no matter how long it takes. I just want to touch base on a couple items and get to the one main topic. Our police department changed unions this week. They went from the POAM to the Fraternal Order of Police, and then they have assigned new representatives within their ranks. So we will open negotiations with them for their next contract as their current one expires the end of June. I've opened negotiations with Operators 324. That's our other union. That discussion has begun so that we can get things moving again. Their contract also expires the end of June. We have an RFP out for IT services at the moment. We've had some interest, different groups. I think we'll end up getting some good opportunities and offers that'll serve us much better than the current group is doing. And then the most important item I need to touch base on is budget workshops. We have a budget prepared. We're ready to have workshops. What are you guys doing tomorrow night? We have 3 meetings before the clock expires, and that would be regular meetings. We can schedule a separate budget workshop. We can go before the next 2 meetings. It's totally in your hands. If you recall last year, thrown into the fire, I jammed through the entire budget in one night. I don't think that is that difficult. I have a much better grasp of it now than I did then, but there are, going to be some, the budget, is a guide or a roadmap. There will be contracts and things that supplement that coming down the line. Like I just mentioned, the police and the other unions, IT, these sort of things that the council will have to approve that will tie into numbers in that budget. But ultimately, going over the budget itself, not that different than we've done before. Not that much has changed. just some of the contributing factors to the budget in the end, well, we would certainly be able to discuss. So,
What's your estimated presentation time for the entire budget?
I could probably pretty well go over it in 2 hours from beginning to end. Then with discussion, it'll end up maybe being 3 hours. It could be, like you said, certain number of funds before a council meeting. And then at the next council meeting, we'd go over the rest of them.
How many budget workshops have you sat in on now?
Many.
26, 27 of them probably in that ballpark?
Yeah.
Don't they all range pretty much usually from 3 to 5 hours? Yeah.
2 to 3 hours.
So clarification, I think it probably helps to start with. There's probably several of us on this board who can never do it until X o'clock at night, correct? Should we start there?
That's my question. Either we do it after, that's why I asked Stephen tonight if he just came from work or if he was home first, if he could come before the meeting, or if you want to do it on a Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, I'm open to any days. I think other people maybe have stricter schedules and can't get here before X o'clock, and I think we should define that first.
Anything but the 14th.
That's the day of man.
I mean, I'd be happy to spend Mother's Day here. I'm sure my wife would really appreciate that, so.
But not all of Mother's Day, just a part of it.
I mean, look, I could do tomorrow night. I can't do Thursday night. I could do Friday night. I could do Saturday, but I feel like I probably have more of a flexible schedule than most others because I'm my own boss. So does anybody else want to weigh in with some more restrictions?
We did 7 o'clock on kind of thing. That's
Right.
me, but
Pete, what about you?
I was thinking, I mean, all evenings, I work from home, so all evenings after 5 o'clock, I'm available.
The 14th then.
I like the idea of coming earlier to a council meeting, because that time slot is already set aside for village stuff. I could probably be here by 6, if needed. And then every other day is just, I don't know. My schedule is not very predictable, unfortunately. But that time frame probably works best for me in particular.
So you're saying the earliest you can get here is 6.
Yes.
Earliest Wayne can get here is 7.
Oh, did he say that?
Yes.
Oh,
He can't get here before 7.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. I'm sorry about that.
So down to you, Mr. Powell.
Yeah, normally I would prefer doing it before the village council meetings. I don't know if you were planning on breaking it up into like 2 or 3 sessions.
Like, I was
Yeah.
thinking based on the time constraint, it would be 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Charter says we have to have it approved by, is it the last meeting in June or the first
Has to be,
meeting in
it
June?
has to be approved by the last meeting in June in order for me to get taxes out.
Yeah, but isn't it called out exactly in the charter?
It used to be May, but I think it got amended.
All right, because I was gonna say, I thought it was the end of May myself, because I thought
That's
that
why
was
we always
odd.
did it
So
the
that's
week
only-
between.
So that's only 2 meetings, and we're talking one council member won't be here for part of it. And then you're talking possibly only 2 hours of total discussion, and it's rushed.
That's woefully insufficient.
That's woefully insufficient. I think we need to, as a council, we just need to hammer out a date,
Mm-hmm.
a 3-hour time slot, and just let's get it scheduled and get it done.
I think Manager Gerbison's recommendation, we do it on a weekend, is probably the only realistic way that we do this without it being like it's been for quite a while, which is we end up getting to do budget reviews so close to time for approval that even, and I think you mentioned this before, if by the time we actually hear it, if we have an issue, there's no time to fix it anyways. And it feels like we're stuck with either put ourselves in jeopardy or rubber stamp the budget that we aren't even happy with. So if we do it in those 2 sessions of 2 hours or less, we've stretched it out. There's no time to fix it. There's
No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. Let's pick a weeknight.
But wait a minute, but picking a weeknight, picking a weeknight means 7 PM or after on any other day of the week than a village council meeting.
So 7 PM till 9 or 10 and get it done.
So either that or a weekend, because I don't think I heard anybody say that they can't do a weekend. I'm not saying I prefer that, saying, did we rule that out? I don't think we did. I feel like I'm gonna regret saying that, so.
Well, so in theory, well, I don't want to, it would be, what I was going to say is you could start at 6 with someone arriving late.
He's missing an hour. of
Right,
crew.
I got it.
No, it's not
I
acceptable.
mean, there might be, as long as we have some flexibility in the timing, I could probably make adjustments somewhat, but I can't guarantee 6, but
What do you mean by flexibility?
maybe 6:30, I can probably, I can maybe do 6:30, as long as I kind of have,
Do next Tuesday?
yeah, as long as I have enough gap, I can.
It's the
What's the
13th.
date of the 13th?
It's the 13th. We do it on the 13th. It's not Friday, yeah.
Yeah, 13, 7 o'clock.
Taco Tuesday.
But do you want to wait till, he said he could do 6:30 potentially. Do you want to try to move it up? I don't know.
If we're gonna do it Tuesday, it might as well be 7 when we can be sure we can be here. You're not rushing.
I think what Stephen's saying is do it before the 2 next prior council meetings, but isn't that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, absolutely, sooner the better that we start these things. Yes, I agree, but I don't know that we're gonna be
Yeah,
able to
maybe,
coordinate a sooner than next Tuesday unless people are willing to come in some other night of this week or the weekend.
Well, next Tuesday is better than waiting for the next Tuesday and then the next Tuesday in June to hear the budget.
Yeah.
The meeting we're going to.
I don't think anybody's arguing we should go further.
Okay, so can everybody be here next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock?
But I just realized I'm going out of the country, so just kidding. Yes, I can do that.
Is that
Can
Canada?
I do
Can
have
we
that
tell
coming
you-
up, but
Steven's going out of the country. Can everybody be here tomorrow, next Tuesday at 7 o'clock?
I have to check my work calendar. That's my main calendar. I will let you know by 8:30 tomorrow morning if that absolutely won't work. That's.
tentatively,
Tentatively.
We need food. Pizza.
Is it in the budget?
No.
If we're
It's not
starting
that
at
much.
7 o'clock, I'm not waiting that long, so
Okay.
I'm
No,
good.
I can't wait till that late either.
Okay.
snacks.
Bag of M&Ms.
Coffee.
Oh, there you go.
Red Bulls all around.
Oh, yeah, we don't need that.
Do you have anything else for the council?
No.
Ms. Keister?
I will be out of town, the 14th through the 16th, for a Treasurers Institute.
Oh, we got it right under the
Yeah,
wire,
we did.
right under the wire.
It'll be a late night getting to
She's
there.
gonna go exhausted.
It'll be all right.
Wayne? Mr. Paul?
No, sir.
Mr. Schneider?
Tim, I don't know if I want to steal your thunder here. I wanted to ask, without discussing whether or not there's any negotiation, I wanted to discuss what the status of the purchase agreement was for the parking lots.
No peep.
I'm
Zero response.
confused because there was back and forth communication immediately thereafter where he raised concerns. I know he communicated with you and he left it as,
Last I heard.
did he raise concerns?
Just,
Yeah, the concern was corrected. And then I reached out to him a week ago and said, status, can you give me an update? and he said, I had a busy Easter. I'll get back to you by tomorrow. And he didn't.
Okay.
And today I texted him and said, hey, can you give me an update? Anything? No response.
That's another, for now on going forward, let's communicate everything in email, copy me and Ms. Kiesler on all communications, and let's send him a message tomorrow seeking a status update.
Clear, I just want to make sure, clarification, was it executed on our end before it was sent to him?
No.
Yeah. Then he's never going to sign it. That's the point. This is what we discussed previously. Now, you were absent.
What do you mean executed? Signed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I signed it that night.
Okay, so it was.
So it was- Yes, I signed it that night.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
That's good. Because there's a good reason why he doesn't
No,
sign
because
it.
the motion allowed for either me or you to execute it with my powers as president. and
Right.
It was signed that night.
Because we were under, because you were absent, it was our full intention to have you execute it, but we took the position of, in your absence, the motion I think I actually made was to be executed either by the village manager or the village president in his absence, because we needed to have, no seller is executing a purchase agreement if the purchaser didn't execute it first. That's the whole point. So if we did, then that alleviates that concern. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilor President Stucker.
Yeah, just a couple park updates. Number one, daffodils are in full bloom. Check it out if you haven't been down there already. It looks really nice. Community feedback has been extremely positive and gratifying for all the work that volunteers put in, my blood, sweat, and poison ivy put in. So it's been really nice to get that feedback from the community. We did complete native flower planting and cooperation with the DDA Earth Day cleanup event. It was very successful. We had a lot of volunteers participate. And so we were able to plant in 2 areas a variety of species of native perennials that will come back every year that would naturally grow in Michigan. So it's hopeful that they will continue to come back year after year. I do have some plants left and we'll be scoping out a couple of additional planting areas, and we'll be seeking volunteers for that in cooperation with Park Board. So if you want to join the fun, let me know. And then other updates, Park Board is still working on gathering quotes for refurbishment of the old tennis courts and soliciting different grant funding opportunities. So it takes a lot of effort to get those quotes together, but various board members are working to get that together. We still really are pushing forward with that project to hopefully get that done this year. And one other update is that as we're heading into budget season, the board has been discussing increases in funding on from both sides, village and township. And so I don't know if that's been prepared yet as part of our budget presentation to council, but there is a recommendation from our board to increase contributions from both sides for various park projects, including tennis courts, but there's also some maintenance that needs to be done with the bridge. Bike path is looking in kind of rough shape again. And so there's different things that Park Board would like to implement and have the ability to do so. We need money to do it. So that is my preview of budget presentation. And so can you?
It's a quick question. Not if the answer is complicated or long, but are we equally matching right now, village and township? Because didn't that change? I feel like I'm unclear on that.
This past year we were 50-50, correct, Kim? Previous years, village was contributing more than township. Our township representative on the board is recommending to township that they increase their contribution.
To
So that it would
match
be
or just increase?
50-50.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, to match.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we previously used to match? Did that then change?
We
We
where
matched.
We matched, but the match was like, it was really low.
Right.
The council
Increased.
increased because the park board was suffering.
Right, I was on council then, that's what I say, like, I'm trying to,
And the township didn't. And I think we increased one more year. And then-
Several years in a row, we were
and-
progressively increasing. Just this past year, decided not to. And so now, I think park board, and new park board representation from the township recognizes that, increases in funding are necessary to have the park, in a space that we would like it to be for the community. So I don't know if I'm like blowing the lead, but we would like to seek $25,000 from each board.
it currently, isn't the village's end 20 right now?
12.5. But the previous year, we were at what, 18.5?
We increased for the equipment, wasn't it for the playground equipment?
That was a different year. I think that was the year before.
Because I think it's been
That's all.
12.5 for the last 2 years.
And maybe that was a separate line item for the playground equipment.
Yes.
Mhm.
21,000 and change, maybe.
Maybe.
But it wasn't that like a mid-year budget amendment or something? Or was it, because it wasn't pre-planned for the budget, was it?
Right.
You know, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this is not the right, I apologize. I have just questions, I was just curious. Go ahead, sorry.
No problem. So yeah, hope that this board will also support our efforts to improve the park, and just the beautification aspects have just been a tiny little stepping stone, but it's been really nice to get that community feedback. So appreciate your support during budget time. And that's it.
Yeah, I just had one thing. At a previous DDA meeting, there was mention of a social district survey that went out. I think it went to the businesses. I was curious if they would be willing to share the contents of that survey and results, if they would be so kind.
That's its purpose. That's its purpose, is to do the survey, collect valid responses, quantify those results into a report, and then present it to council. That's the reason why they're doing it. It's what we discussed at our joint subcommittee. We knew we'd want more data, more feedback, more information, so we can discuss what, if anything, we want to do about it. Do we want to get rid of it? Do we want to expand it? Do we want to leave it the same? The only way to do that is with real
Feedback.
practical data now, not just hypothetical. What's going to happen? You know, does it turn into a crazy frat party every day down there, or is it a ghost town? Does it have any actual impact? We wanted to get real data, so we requested that they put out a survey, collect that data so that they can make an informed presentation to council. So yes, unequivocally, yes, they will be presenting that to council. That's why they're doing it in the first place.
It was part of our request when we passed the social district for some kind of update with it around a year, and that's right around the time that it's
Right.
been.
This was a survey of the business owners.
Correct, because it's their spirit and intent. They're not surveying citizens. Their job is to increase economic impact, to drive businesses. So they survey business owners, directly the businesses in the downtown, how, if in any way, has it had an impact. Now, they had a survey draft, they presented it, we gave feedback, we modified it. I gave lots of examples of how you and I fought over surveys before, and going like, I'm telling you right now, this thing needs to be scientifically valid. You cannot ask a question like this. You have to ask a question like this instead. And so tried to make sure that it was as scientifically valid and statistically quantifiable as possible, given the context they're shaping it in. And so that feedback is what they intend to bring to us. So we don't have a preview on the results. We had a preview on the questions.
all I had.
A related question, are we expecting to receive monthly updates from the director, from the DDA board? I don't know if that was something that came up,
Monthly updates
like the
on,
director's report.
well, previously the director's report was always in our packet,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
I thought
it
so.
was.
Yeah.
I just don't know if we haven't seen one.
I don't know why it's not.
Okay.
I don't think that that's intentional. Does anybody from staff want to tell us is it just not been getting submitted to council, or, I know it used to be in our packets.
I haven't
I
seen
haven't
one.
seen one.
I remember reading Ms. Shaw's for years, and I've seen Angela's in here before as well, right? So it's just a lack of it being supplied to us? I'm sure that's unintentional.
Is there one that the DDA gets?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
We haven't.
Yeah,
seen
they have a very similar agenda packet like us. There's always the director's report, as well as several of the reports that we get. I mean, they're somewhat equivalent, you know? So I think, and it used to be submitted. I'm guessing this is just slipping through the cracks that the director's report isn't being
That's
submitted
my
to.
guess too.
Okay.
Yeah, would be good to reach out, get that again in our packet.
Mr. Paul, do you have anything else? I want to thank the homecoming committee for all their efforts. I know it was a lot of work and appreciated. The DDA sponsored cleanup of downtown was, and the parks participation in that was just a good day. They had a lot of participation from adults, high school kids, cleaned up the entire downtown, did some flower planting, and that helped out Mindy. So all the participants, I just wanted to publicly state that it was a great event
Yes.
and well done. I think I had something else, but I can't think of it. So, council members. I know we're on our computers, and I know we don't go on our computers a lot, but when Mr. Kerberson sends out an email, I'm guilty of this too. Respond to his emails. And Dale, if you're not getting those responses, let me know. That said, we're adjourned.